The holes in the New School Act are astonishing. And oddly, Kemi Badenoch's criticisms are perfectly correct. It's rare that I would say anything positive about Kemi Badenoch, but now I will. And it frames the broader ideological divide. Education reforms rarely inspire neutrality. They provoke passion, polemic, parliamentary clashes, and this week's exchanges are no surprise. What I thought was interesting in the PMQs yesterday was how Starmer absolutely avoided the issues. There were some fiery exchanges over this Children's Wellbeing in Schools Act bill that encapsulate the ideological battle. It stretches back decades, but um, the issue seems to be, indeed, as Kerry Badenoch points out, that teachers will be underpaid, um, and the headline issues about breakfast clubs draws attention away from this. It's about the role of the state versus the individual in shaping educational outcomes. And Kemi Badenoch's excoriation of the bill as educational vandalism reflects a fundamental conservative commitment, maintaining the freedoms granted to academies. Well, I don't think those freedoms are sufficient. These freedoms, first introduced by Labour under Tony Blair, expanded by the Tories, have been credited with driving up standards, particularly for disadvantaged pupils, and that must be good. And Badenoch argues that Labour's reforms reverse this progress. The Schools Act requirement for academies to align with national pay and curriculum standards strikes at the heart of what made them successful, which was autonomy. And Badenoch highlights the achievements of academies in raising attainment for deprived children, contrasting England's success with Wales, where local authority control persists. And she warns that imposing uniform pay scales will actually cap teachers' salaries. And I think she's right in that, diminishing incentives for excellence. But it's not just salaries that provide an incentive for excellence. Labour counters that there's no ceiling on pay, only a floor. But critics rightly point out that floor could still stifle the innovative recruitment practices that have attracted top talent, including specialists without traditional teaching training qualifications. And there's many systems in place allowing people without the formal teacher training qualifications to take on teacher training on site and to be nurtured and monitored and encouraged on site. Badenoch's examples of doctors being barred from teaching biology and Olympic athletes excluded from PE highlight the rigidity of Labour's approach. And while professional qualifications are essential, overly prescriptive rules can exclude valuable expertise. And Labour emphasises that the bill will benefit vulnerable children, introducing breakfast clubs, affordable uniforms, a national register for homeschooled pupils, and so on. These measures are laudable, but Badenoch raises uncomfortable questions. Why bundle these reforms with policies that risk undermining academies' ability to support SEND pupils? And academies often innovate to meet the complex needs of, for example, SEND students, tailoring their provision in ways traditional schools cannot. Requiring all schools to follow the same curriculum and pay structures risks homogenising an education system that is already on its knees and that should prioritise flexibility for the most vulnerable. Badenoch's accusation that the bill represents the unions finally getting their way is pointed, and Labour's reforms undoubtedly strengthen the role of unions by imposing national frameworks. While this may ensure minimum standards, it risks reducing competition and parental choice, key drivers of improvement in academies. The union's influence is further underscored by the removal of single-word Ofsted judgments, a change that Badenoch argues will obscure failing standards for parents. In this, I disagree entirely. I think Ofsted judgment shouldn't be published at all. Ofsted should be there. to support, not to judge. And Labour claims this will encourage more nuanced assessment of schools. I don't think either side is right in this. Badenoch frames this as a retreat from accountability. The clash over the Schools Act is not just about policy minutiae, it's about two visions for education. Neither is correct. Labour's approach reflects its faith in centralised systems to ensure fairness. The Conservatives, by contrast, argue that autonomy and competition have delivered excellence, particularly for disadvantaged students. In areas, they're right. Badenoch's warning that the bill undermines decades of progress resonates with those who view academies as one of the few unqualified successes of recent educational policy. And they're right. Labour's assertion that these changes will fix the mess rings hollow for parents and teachers who value the freedoms academies have provided. The Schools Act is therefore a paradox. It seeks to protect vulnerable children while potentially weakening the very schools that have done the most to help them. Badenoch's criticism is not merely political point scoring, it highlights genuine concerns about autonomy, innovation and accountability. If Labour wants this bill to succeed, it must address these flaws, ensuring that raising standards doesn't come at the cost of flexibility or aspiration. Badenoch's call to preserve academy freedoms is not an act of vandalism, but a defence of what works. In the end, of course, the government doesn't need to pay any attention to what Badenoch is saying, because it has a big enough majority to push this through. But pushing it through will further destroy the educational standards in Britain. And this idea of bringing everything down to the lowest common denominator, that's not about excellence, that's about conformity. And this remains a debate not about education, but about ideology and control. And the stakes couldn't be higher for the next generation, and the outlook couldn't look bleaker.